And we're now live. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we were doing a little exercise. If you just joined us, we were doing a little exercise where you state which city you're joining us from and how you got to know about the webinar. So just use the chat box to do that as I let more people in. I'm only realizing now that I should have let people join by themselves and not admit them. But thank you for joining us today. Yeah, so we have someone from Harare, someone joining us from Maputo, Mozambique, someone joining us from Koromonzi. So where are you joining us from? Just tell us in the chat box so that we try and make this a little bit interactive before we actually begin. Another person, Koromonzi. I hope Koromonzi is well. I hope it's as sunny as Harare is today. Another person in Harare. Another one in Harare. We have a lot of people from Harare. Okay, so it seems a lot of people have already shared where they're joining us from. So without further ado, so a lot more people are joining. I wasn't expecting that. Please confirm you can see my screen. You can also use the chat box to just confirm. Esther is joining us from Chivu. Great. So we'll begin. And if you're not familiar with who we are, I'll just give you a brief introduction of who we are. ACT in Africa is an entrepreneurship support organization, but we also do more than that. We provide research and consultancy for SMEs, corporates, NGOs, and civil society organizations as well. We have been operational since 2014. And since then, we've dealt with a lot of entrepreneurs that were passing through our ecosystem, be it through the programs or the programs that we go and support. And the basis of this webinar was based on what we've seen over the years, especially in the SME space. Let's just call it SME space today, although we'll include entrepreneurs and startups, although there's a minute difference. Today, we'll just call it the SME space. So what we is that we lack of professionalism, and this is not something that we're saying is wrong, but at times you get to learn to do it as you operate as a business. So we thought perhaps today will be a day to talk a little bit about what professionalism is, why it's important, and how you can systemize or put it into operation. Especially process of practicing professionalism within the business. And when we say within the business, it could be within the physical environment of the business, digital environment of the business, and also when interacting with stakeholders and especially customers. That's somewhat required to do that. So the conversation today is going to be based on that. But after the presentation and during the short discussions that we have during the presentation, we have a networking session where we'll use the Zoom rooms feature within the Zoom platform that we're on to then network with other people within this webinar. I'll give you pointers of what to do during the networking session, and I'll also advise on how we will use the feature to then do the networking part of today's agenda. So, professionalism, what is it? So it's the term used to describe a certain standard of behavior. The behavior could be physical behavior, digital behavior, whatever behavior you would want to define as a business, with a specific level of competence and adherence to that standard. So the standard is set as per behavior as a business, and you can decide on how you want to operate as a business. So there's no one shoe size fit all. The standard is definitely dependent on the type of business and the level of business that you're in. It also includes showing respect for others. The others could be customers, employees, and stakeholders within your business. And also taking responsibility for your work and performing according to a certain job description. As we talk about the job description, you have to understand that, or rather, we understand that in the SME space, we rarely have job descriptions, especially when onboarding people. We might say we need someone to do finances, but there's no actual job description for that. We might say we need someone who does marketing and sales, but we actually don't have a job description for that. So it's quite important, especially when onboarding. When I say taking in new employees, that you have a job description that you use, so that people or the person taking over that role understands what's required from them. Because some as a business, in terms of professionalism, come from so that we do not get feedback. Please keep your mic on mute unless you want to make a contribution. Thank you very much. So as I was saying, a job description is very important. And also outside the job description, you need to have a contract in place. It will guide you in operating and managing your employees, or even yourself as the business owner. You need to have somewhat of a job description. I know we take many roles as the business owners. Even an employee might take a lot of roles within a small business, but it's important to have that basis or that standard that you set when they start. Then as time goes on, you can then start adding the details within the job description. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we need to include what we might call business practices or principles. And these come in various forms. So these are a few, and I'll ask you guys to mention the others that you think are quite important within a business. The first, and what we have seen a lot of SMEs or entrepreneurs or startups struggle with, is the use of work time and managing their time well. You find people arrive to meetings late. These could be even internal meetings. So there's no justification to be late, even if it's your own business and it's your own meeting and you're the one who set that meeting. So it's very important to set a standard as the business owner that everything starts at a certain time. The first thing that you will probably do, which is somewhat the obvious thing, is the work start time. So you as the business and the employees need to agree that work starts at 8, starts at 8:30, and it starts at 9, or it starts at 9. Without that, boundary or without that somewhat of a rule set within the business, you get to struggle with managing either the time or managing the people within the business. So it's important to have that standard set within your business. We tend to become too casual in the ways that we approach work as SMEs, and that needs to be addressed because as the business grows, that culture is adopted into a bigger organization, and you wouldn't want a big corporate with its employees arriving late because that's the thing that they're already used to. Um, and the other idea that we have, it's not much of a problem in Zimbabwe, but in other countries, you might find that there's a certain tendency of treating people of a different religious sect differently, especially even gender. Gender is quite popular within the Zimbabwean context, where, for the lack of a better example, women are mostly treated in a somewhat of substandard way compared to their male colleagues. So treating people regardless of gender or religion is very important. Treating them the same is very important. And another thing that people, as a business owner, struggle with is the idea of onboarding or using onboarding practices that are consistent and reputable. Um, in the African context, as soon as you have a business, your family knows about it. And if there's a mzukuru or a grandchild or whatever who's looking for something to do while they're waiting for university or going for A level, they quickly come to you and say, our child is looking for something to do. May you please give them a job? So in that context, sometimes we're forced to just take on new people, but it then undermines the other employees that you took on at an earlier time, but they went through a thorough process. So there is need to then put a proper system or practices that you use when onboarding new employees. And I'll talk a little bit more about the onboarding process because it's also very important in business. Then the other thing is the use of polite language to employees and customers or clients. You wouldn't want a situation where employees not satisfied at work or they're highly disengaged because of the language that you use when you talk to them. You should remember that they're also humans and they're also a big part of the business. So if you do not treat them well, they'll easily leave. That's why you might find a high number of people leaving your business and you wonder why. It's somewhat because of how you treat them and the language that you use when addressing them. It's somewhat also the tone that you use. So you have to be very careful with the tone that you use when you're talking to your colleagues or your bosses or whoever you talk to. Because a lot of people understand or rather read into the tone that you use when you're communicating with them. And it somewhat becomes of a big problem if they feel like you're not regarding them or you're not respecting them as a human. So part of the whole professionalism space has to do with how you communicate with people. And the last thing, which is somewhat not, it's highly relevant, but would expect better people to do better on. The idea of keeping client information confidential and not to use it for personal use. So you have clients that you deal with, and they come to you expecting a certain level of privacy based on the situation or based on the products or services that you provide for them. So if you then, they would expect you to not air out their dirty laundry, as it were, when dealing with you. At most SME spaces, you rarely find NDA agreements, which are non-disclosure agreements. But still, without that agreement, it's still very important as a business to have certain practices or confidentiality that you practice within the business so that businesses or clients feel comfortable working with you. And as you grow as a business, your reputation will be quite untainted because of such handling of the information that you would have received from your clients. And before I move on, I just wanted to find out what other practices or principles do you think are important in terms of professionalism? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and just speak.
Dressing, the way one dresses.
Well, yes, that's very important. Dressing is very, very important. We have a lady that's going to join us later, the surprise guest. If you notice the message, I mentioned a surprise guest. She will take us on the idea of grooming and etiquette in the SME space. So dressing is very, very important. How you dress to work and to clients is very important. Is there anything else that you think is important?
I also think communication channels must be followed, whether upward or downward channels, because if we communicate willy-nilly, it may create confusion within the organization. So I think communication channels must be well understood within an organization.
Yeah, I agree. Because say a superior then feels they were challenged by you skipping them and going to the manager when dealing or airing a certain concern that you have. So communication channels are very important, I agree. Speaking of communication channels, as someone maybe thinks of an idea or an example, I actually struggled with, with professionalism at some point, or what I would like to call bad professionalism or unprofessional of me. I used to call or message my colleagues after hours, and it used to be very bad because my justification was that that's when I get the inspiration of work-related items, and I would message them at whatever hour I think of doing so. But then looking back and then understanding their concerns or rather how I was acting, then somewhat led me to think that this is the professional tool. If we agree that we are to do work-related items from 8 to 5 and maybe just an hour after 5 p.m., then that's the agreement that we have as a team. But it's also dynamic and subjective to your business. If you want people to then have that type of open communication that it happens whatever time, I'm sure you wouldn't call them at 2 a.m. But if your business then agrees that you can message us at 2 a.m. and when we wake up, we'll see that message. But that's a story that I just wanted to share with you guys.
To add on to the point on communication, I also believe honesty and transparency is important for professionalism.
Definitely, I agree. So if there's no other contribution, we'll move on to the next slide.
And I suppose before you move on, a record keeping, I think, is also part of this professional space. If we don't keep our records, then the professionalism also goes out of the window. That's my thinking.
Yeah, I agree. Because especially imagine if you're trying to keep client records on top of your head and you're not actually documenting that. It seems like you're unprofessional while you're then trying to remember. For example, garage maida how many orders or something like that. So a client is easily put off when you do something like that, especially in front of them. It comes off bad and terrible for your reputation as a brand. So moving on. So how can we summarize these principles or practices in a nutshell? And mind you, this is just a skeleton of what we believe. There's more that you could add within your business. The idea of competency is very important. Employees apply their knowledge and skills to the best of their ability in the interest of the society, be it the business and the environment, be it external or internal environment. Integrity. Employees work with integrity, honesty, and according to the law, and generally are certain norms of professional conduct. This is somewhat what links to what Chennai said, the idea of integrity and honesty, be it in your communication, be it in your conduct, be it in even in pricing. It can be very important to have honest conversations with your customers and with also your employees. Respect, this is a non-negotiable. Employees respect the dignity and rights of others and the image of the business and or profession. So you would want employees representing the business or wearing your company logo and doing somewhat uncalled for behavior in their spaces. So this is something that would ruin your brand, but it also might lead to customer turnovers, customers leaving you for competition. Then there's the idea of development. Employees should continuously strive to improve their own skills and facilitate the improvement of the skills of their subordinates. So as a manager, provide opportunities for your subordinates to learn and upskill themselves because it benefits the business. As a business owner, give your employees the opportunities to do so as well. It does not necessarily have to be always on the company's cost, but providing the opportunities or giving them the time off to do that is very important. One may then ask that, what if employees start using that as an advantage to take leave or to go off work? But I'm sure you'll be able to then set a standard of how much time they can actually take out from work to then pursue educational activities. And also the idea of them doing a proof, we could say proofreading, that they're actually going to pursue educational activities. And confidentiality, we also spoke about this a bit earlier. The idea of divulging client information or even business information is very important. Do not spread rumors about the business. That is the worst thing that you could possibly do. That we're struggling. It's not necessarily to spread all that laundry within the public space. It gives off a bad reputation for the business. And on communication, I just wanted to touch on something on communication. The idea of mannerisms and tone that you use is very important, because even via call, someone can easily get irritated by how you communicate with them. And that somewhat leads into the idea of professionalism. Some of the best people that talk to customers well on the phone call centers, and one is because they're being recorded and they could easily get into trouble from their managers if they talk to customers in a bad way. But you can easily take what they're doing and insert it into your business as a practice, that when we answer calls or when we talk to clients, this is what we do. Also ask them just before the call ends, how else can I help you? So that you give them somewhat of a personal touch to how you're dealing with them. So it's very important to watch your tone and the manner in which you're talking to a customer, to an employee, and especially to customers. It builds long-lasting relationships with them and provide good business for your company. And also when trying to talk to employees, it's important to have somewhat of a empathetic listening behavior that you do, where it's not about listening to respond, but listening to understand where they're coming from, right? There's a difference between the type of listening. Most people say you're just hearing me, but you're not actually listening, because there's a difference between hearing and listening. So it's very important to know the distinction and to the next slide. So what needs to be done? We've been talking a lot about what professionalism is and how it can be, what it entails, the type of examples of bad professionalism, but what can you as a business do from this point on, right? So the first thing that you need to do is to create a code of conduct, right? And this guides all people in the business on how to act within the team, with employees, with the customers or clients. And this goes all the way from appearance, communication, and responsibilities that each person might have within the business. So in terms of responsibilities, you remember earlier we mentioned the idea of having a job description. It's very important to then know if this type of job is required within the business, who gets to do it, right? That way the business owner or the manager doesn't then always follow up on why was this not done. But with the job description, everyone knows what they're supposed to do within the business, right? Appearance, someone mentioned it about how the person dresses. Within the code of conduct, you then mentioned that we do not do dreadlocks. It could be we do not do bald heads. It could be anything. But we're not saying limit your employees' creativity or how they express themselves, but there's a certain standard that they should not breach because it affects the business, right? In first world countries, the idea of having visible tattoos and stuff like that, they don't care about that anymore. But in somewhat developing countries, it's still a problem. But as a business, you can always decide what to do on how to approach certain things. It's not for us to say, but it's for you and your employees to decide on. Which brings me to a very important part about the code of conduct. You need to involve your employees in the formulation of this thing. Because when you go to them and say, we will not do this, this, and that, we will be doing this, this, and that, you lack the engagement or you lack contribution or the co-creation that you're able to benefit from if you involve them. So as soon as you involve them, they will feel like they're part of the decisions that will be then made, since they are part of the ecosystem that will then be governed by those decisions, right? And another thing that you should do is to create a culture within the business that has a moral compass. I know as a business owner or as a manager, you already have too much responsibilities. But the other thing that you need to consider is that your employees or your subordinates look up to you. So it's important to then be the moral compass that they can use when presenting themselves, when talking to customers, or when talking to other employees. Because if you talk to employees in a bad way, it's easy for them to then talk to other employees in a similar way, right? But if you treat them with respect, if you listen to them attentively, and if you actually dress or speak in a manner that somewhat builds this moral compass, it's easy for them to then adopt such behaviors, since they easily see it from you. And as the business owner, it's very important to be always early, because if you're late for meetings or late for work, employees could easily start doing the same thing. If you're a manager, it's also important. We find that a lot of managers feel like, now that I'm the manager, I can do what I want. But that's actually where the job starts, right? The job doesn't start, the achievement is not when you get a job, but when you actually start the job, right? That's where most of the work starts, right? So this affects a wide spectrum of areas such as teamwork, decision making, and customer care as well. And the idea of onboarding, I remember the other time, earlier I had mentioned the idea of onboarding new employees is very important. As you onboard, take them through the code of conduct. We've already created a code of conduct, right? Take them through the code of conduct, have them discuss the code of conduct with you. If they have any areas that they do not agree with, then they can air out their views then. The terrible thing that you could possibly do is onboard a new employee and expect them to act within the code of conduct that they actually don't know about, right? It's very important that you take them through the code of conduct, right? Because what you face when you're on board could be If you fail to onboard properly, those are your typical bad employees, as it were, that you will have within the business, because they are not aligned with the culture and the values of the organization. But as soon as they enter the doors of the business, if they're already familiar with the culture and the values of the organization, it becomes way easier for them to act accordingly. And what you could also do is have refresher trainings with your employees, including yourself being part of those trainings, where you then walk through the different elements within the code of conduct that you have, or your culture or your values, so that people are always on top of game, on point, as it were, when it comes to dealing with customers, employees, or other stakeholders, right? So what could this mean for you? Sorry, I'm trying to rush so that we have more time for our networking session. So apologies, but feel free to jump in wherever you feel like you want to make a point. The advantages of practicing everything that we just talked about is that it reduces cost by building customer loyalty. As soon as employees or customers are treated in a way that they feel valued and feel loved, they will stay within the business. A lot of businesses say that it costs more to look for more employees than to retain them, right? So it's similar to looking for customers. It costs more to look for new customers than to retain them. So as soon as you just invest a little bit of time and maybe money into building a business that is professional in its conduct, you will see that your bottom line will be happy. And with that, you are easily attractable to investors if you're an investor-ready business, as they see your brand flourishing, if I were to use that word, within the space that it operates in. And there's also an idea of creating a positive image for the business, which can also attract more customers, but also build a reputation. A lot of people know that the value of Apple is more than just what their assets are, but also the brand or the image that they have as a business. So your business could easily be that as well. Idea of retaining good employees and also increasing customer satisfaction and engagement. And also employees develop a positive relationship with their coworkers and also their managers or subordinates, and that's within the business. So key points: dress to impress, especially as a business owner. I'm not saying buy 10 suits that you change every day, but try to be presentable as a business owner, because people look up to you. Even as a manager, people look up to you in the way that you present yourself. And always be on time, even for staff meetings, right? A trick that most people say is set your clock or time or watch 10 minutes earlier, so that you're at least earlier for everything than arriving late. For clients and partners or stakeholders, that's non-negotiable. You need to arrive on time. Be a listener, especially with employees and with customers as well. A lot of times we neglect the employees and just listen to the clients, but we need to listen to both of them. Empathetic listening, right? I touched a bit about that, but it's listening to understand instead of to respond, right? Be a good communicator, especially with your customers. What you could do, you could include progress updates, even delays. We can communicate that to customers, because they feel like they are more, their concerns are being addressed if you communicate with them regularly. After sales services are a great opportunity to create meaningful relationships as well with your customers. How they're doing, are they using the product or service well? Do they find satisfaction in the product or service that you provided for them? And also the implementation of a customer care training, especially learning how to deal with difficult or angry customers, because there will always be one or two difficult or angry customers. Yes, they say the customer is always right, but you also need to understand how to deal with such a customer, right? So as I end, what other key points did you think you discovered or learned about during this short webinar before we start the the grooming and etiquette session. I'll just give 1 or 2 people so that we don't waste much time. Going once, twice, sold.
I would have to say empathetic listening stood out for me. Before I thought it was probably just listening, but that clarity that you made between listening and hearing was a pointer to take home for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? I see Clemens has just unmuted. Do you want to say something? I'll take that as a no. So thank you very much for your time. Now I'll just give Bellona a short, some time to talk about the idea of grooming and etiquette within the SME space. Then we move on to the networking event that will then start soon after that. Thank you very much. Bellona, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak to you today. I believe a lot of the stuff that I will cover you've mentioned already, but I am going to include some elements which will be new to some of you, but will be repetition to others. But repetition is always good. You learn more from that. So I'm just going to go into my short presentation on grooming and etiquette, and it will include some information on dressing as well. Right.
Do you want sharing rights or?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, while you're doing that, I'm just going to start off. The fact that the issue of dressing has already been mentioned as important to entrepreneurs means that we all know that appearances matter. I know in the past it's been said that men are more visual than women, but I believe we're all visual beings. Right, there we go. So your appearance affects how you're perceived, whether we like it or not. Even the Bible mentions somewhere that men judge by appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. It's a fact of life. We judge books by their cover. So how you are perceived is totally in your control. My company is called Professional Presence, and I work using image management strategies to assist people to present their image in the way that they want to be perceived. There are a lot of strategies that we use. I'm not able to cover them here, but I will point to them as I'm going through. Right. So as I've mentioned, my company is called Professional Presence. We do image management strategies. We've got a finishing school and a beauty academy as well. Now, when we think of image, a lot of people simply think about appearance, dressing, hair, makeup, but it's a lot more than just appearance. The core image is basically who you are on the inside, the authentic you. Authenticity is a very important term that we're hearing these days. Everybody wants to deal with someone who's authentic and not a copy. So in clarity, image management is not about making you into a copy of somebody else. It's actually trying to bring out that authenticity in you so that you become that one, that only, that original. Image is also about reputation, what people say about you. And one of my favorite terms is that image is about what people say about you after you've left the room. It's also about outer image, which is appearance. It's about how you interact with others. And lastly, it's about the promises you make, whether or not you keep those promises, whether you're trustworthy or not. Right, so the very first and most important point about grooming etiquette and even dressing well is grooming itself, bathing specifically. I've got a session that I do, and it's entitled, "Are you bathing or simply passing through water?" And in essence, it exposes the fact that a lot of us think that we bath well, or a lot of us think that bathing well is being light-skinned, for example. There are many misconceptions about what bathing well is. The reality is very few people are actually taught, whether as they're growing up or as they become adults, how to bath, how to wash their own bodies. And it's a very interesting topic, which I hope to be able to share with you one day. But in essence, I'm just going to give you some tips about bathing. There are certain tools that you need to be able to bath well. Number one, water, obviously. Number two, a bathing vessel. It could be a tub, it could be a shower, but it could also simply be a bucket. Now, one of the tools that I say everyone must have are these scrubbing gloves. If you don't have these, I would say please go and get them. Now, why are they important as part of bathing? They're important because scrubbing your skin helps you to diminish the appearance of blemishes, pimples, blackheads, your skin smooth. It diminishes the appearance of hyperpigmentation, which is where you notice that a person has different shades, different complexions on their body. Sometimes those hyperpigmentations are hormonal, sometimes it's because of medicines we take, sometimes it's because of the food we eat, but generally it's because we're not scrubbing. So please invest in one of these. Now, included in bathing is the issue of hair care. I know it was spoken about earlier with regards to hairstyles, locks were mentioned, and the times that we're living in now are really great in that locks have become a lot more acceptable and a lot cleaner as well than how we perceived them in the past. Yes, certainly in regular professional corporate settings, they are still not as accepted. But I'm believing that we're entrepreneurs here. And our space is a lot more creative. So as long as you keep your hair clean, any hairstyle will do. We're in a space again where wigs are very easily accessible. So it's easy for you to look clean. Now I want to talk about the use of fragrances. Often, I'm sure you've heard enough times and you've experienced it yourself, body odor is simply not acceptable. But did you know that overuse of fragrances is just as bad as body odor? As young people would say these days, same WhatsApp group. Don't overuse fragrances. There are thousands of perfumes out there, ranging from $3 to $1,500. So don't assume that because your fragrance smells good to you, it smells good to everybody. Fragrance can cause nausea, can cause headaches in other people. So I would say with fragrances, less is more. If at all, avoid using fragrances unless you're using them in your intimate space, because one should only be able to smell your fragrance when they're in your personal space. As you know, personal spaces, when someone comes within a meter of you to hug you, but generally, the idea that your fragrance should leave a trail, dispel that myth. It's just not advisable if you want to have a good image as an entrepreneur. Now, dressing was mentioned. Certainly dress the part. If you are, for example, a gym instructor, then you can get away with wearing your vest, showing your rippled muscles, your abs, and showing us that you do work out. If, for example, you're a hairdresser or a makeup artist, you are at liberty to have a uniform that shows exactly what you do. Carry your tools with you. Have your makeup brushes on a belt. Always inspire confidence in us so that when we look at you, we don't have to doubt, we don't have to think twice as to whether or not you are actually doing the work that you say you do. Now, a lot of people also have the misconception that dressing requires you to wear expensive brands. Yes, expensive clothes do look nice. Sometimes they look good because of the quality of the material. But generally, if you are clean, if you wear clothes that look the part and that fit you well, you will inspire confidence in those that you're doing business with. You don't have to wear Versace or Gucci or any other brand to look the part. Now, the next point is a very interesting one, and it pertains to underwear. This is one point where I would say spend a lot of money. Get good support. Your underwear will make your clothes look better on you. Your underwear will help you in terms of your posture, how you stand, how everything looks supported on you is determined by the underwear you wear. But for you to get good underwear, you also need to know
It seems we lost Bellona, or is it just me? Yeah, we lost her. Anyways, so as she tries to rejoin, we'll start organizing the breakout rooms. So what we're going to do, let me see, let me look for a magic number. Yeah. I'll create 6 breakout rooms, and within those 6 breakout rooms, you would have 4 or 5 people within there. So what we will do is that as soon as you join a breakout room, you would introduce yourself, you would agree on the order. So let me just mute someone. There we go.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my network had dropped.
It's okay. We'll just do the networking session, then you can continue from the questions and answers segment.
Right.
Thank you. So you would introduce yourself. I know normally they say don't talk about what you do, but who you are. But today, let's talk about what you do, possibly your contact details, and how you'd possibly want to connect with people from a different, say, I am into selling of bananas, and I would like to connect with people that can link me to retailers or something like that. That could be something that you could do. So you could start by, my name is Munya. I work at Action Africa, but I also sell bananas, and I would like to connect with someone who can link me to, to retailers so that I can supply them with bananas. But in my spare time, I'm also involved in charity work, and I would like to listen to other entrepreneurs, what they are going through, and possibly brainstorm with them. My contact details are 0712-456-456. That could be an example, right? Then you move on to the next person. So in each room will have a maximum of 5 people. So I'll give you a maximum of 5 minutes. That means each person is going to present who they are in under a minute, in or under a minute. Does that make sense? It's just raise your hand or say something in the chat box if it makes sense, or if it doesn't. Is that okay with everyone? Cool. So after the first 5 minutes, I'll then switch you around, right? I'll then enter you or move you into a different room with different people. If you find someone, possibly you'll find someone, one person that you've already talked to, but at most, I'm actually seeing, okay, so all groups would have 4 people. Cool. So let me reduce it to 4 minutes. So a minute for each person. Now, actually, let me say 5. Then I'll then I'll move you to another group within the last minute. Thank you very much and enjoy. So just accept the invite to enter the room. Anesu, Esther, welcome back. So I'll just we'll just wait for the last 30 seconds for everyone to join back. And then I'll tell us what we can do next. Ten more seconds, then everyone will be here. Great, and everyone is back. Hello, hello, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. Good, I think that's everyone. So 2 people to tell me just how that experience was before we move on to the next round. Did you struggle? If you had any struggles, what were your struggles?
In my group as well, everyone had a chance to talk, and we learned that we're all doing different SMEs, and we were now about time lapse. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, cool. So I will, another person just to give their experience before we move on to another round of networking. Nothing. Cool. So I'm about to do another round. You will have, again, 5 minutes to talk to each other. Something I mentioned to 2 rooms that I entered. You can also mention a problem that you're facing within the business, and possibly someone could then assist you with an idea of how to tackle that problem. So that's an option that you could also state within the Zoom room that you enter. So it's starting now. Enjoy. Please just accept the invitation. The 5-minute counter has started.